Hello there. This video is just a short technique video for the ladies who attended our event on the 19th of March, and in this video I'm going to show you not just one but two ways to achieve the watercolor stenciled resist effect, as well as the technique on how to mute or tone down bright colored cardstock so that it matches your project, how to create the sand effect, how to stencil these cute little scallop circles, and then of course how to add the micro beads to your project. Okay, so as explained in the notes, you each have one of these Mintay templates, and I do really recommend that you trace this onto the cardstock, the white cardstock that you are going to cut into a couple of pieces. I think the measurements on the notes is 4 by 6s. The Mintay will be slightly wider. That makes absolutely no difference. You will see now. You can of course cut bigger pieces, but I do recommend that you trace it just while your paper is still flat. Okay, and then you can cut it. You can even trace it with a pen if you want to. It's just once you've wet your paper, sometimes it wobbles and it's kind of hard to be able to get a good tracing. Okay, so the inks that I used the Tenacious Teal. You can of course use distress inks as well. I liked this color matching the project, so you are going to ink up a blending brush or a blending foam, and you are going to give your background a good coating of this color ink. Now, I have explained that you can also apply the ink directly. Just remember that it might be a little bit stripy, but you can of course do that. It doesn't really matter for the technique that we are going to do, but now your paper will be very saturated. Okay, so there are two ways you can do this, and I'm actually just going to cut that piece in half so that you don't have to sit through me doing that again. It could be a little painful, so I'm simply going to trim this piece in half. And I wanted to just show you another way to achieve this effect. So you're going to grab any stencil. I've got a little flourish here. You're going to mist the stencil with water, press it over the piece of cardstock that you have inked, and lift it. Okay, just look how beautiful that is. So it will become lighter and more prominent as the ink dries. Another way to achieve this fantastic look is by using a wet wipe and placing your stencil over your inked piece, as in so. You will of course then just get the negative effect, and then you simply wipe the wet wipe through the stencil. Believe it or not, you can see how it's lifting the ink, and once it becomes dry you can see that gorgeous negative effect. Okay, so there's just two ways to achieve this. You can see how it's almost like magic. It's appearing. Two ways to use a stencil, just in a different fashion. Okay, it all depends on what works for you. That's the negative, that's the positive, and I will come back to them once they are dry. Okay, so next up we are going to blend these little circles. As I explained in the class, an easy way to do this is to put a little line of Tombow, if you've still got some Tombow, onto your craft sheet. You need to let it become tacky. So this is just going to take about 30 seconds or so. Let me quickly clean the craft sheet from the teal. Don't worry, I'm not wiping off all my Tombow. And I do recommend that you kind of overlap these so that you don't get Tombow all over your blending brush. Okay, but I have now removed all that. Sorry, that was a little mistake. And we are simply going to use some of our inks to blend a small pattern. For instance, these hearts onto the circles. You can see they're absolutely beautiful, and then you can just move up the stencil onto the next piece. If you want to clean your blending brush, you can either use Carlton roll. Look how beautiful that is. I still wanted to use that for something, but I won't. You can do it like this by rubbing it onto some Carlton roll. It will not remove all the ink, but at least hopefully give you an opportunity to get a kind of cleaner brush before reaching for another one. So this one's going to give me like a fun purple, and you've got your blended little scallop circles. You're going to fold them in half and put them over the twine, and that's the effect you want to get. Okay, so I used pinks, I used the brown, I used yellow, I used the teal, and then even like a green. You can see how my colors blended in. So you can use, of course, clean brushes. I do have a couple of clean brushes. I'm just very lazy when it comes to clean brushes. Terrible, I know. Okay, so I'm now going to show you, if you have a bright piece of cardstock, for instance, like this, what I wanted to do is I want to mute it so that it actually matches my project. I am simply going to take a little bit of gesso. Gesso is my favorite product to go to for a technique like this. You're going to put a little bit of gesso onto your craft sheet. All depends on how much work you have to do. Mist it with some water. Add the same color ink, okay, as what your paper is, I would recommend. Mix the two to create like a wash. So remember when everything used to be whitewashed many years ago? So it's the same principle. So it's going to be pink washed, and when it dries it will have like a milky look. So obviously the more gesso you add, the lighter it will be, and the more ink you add, it will just change the tone. Okay, so you can see there, I just want to get a little bit more gesso here, just using the back of that because my brush is now full of pink and I don't want to contaminate my gesso. You can add a little bit more water until you get the right tone for your project. Now I do recommend let this dry first before you just apply too much gesso, because then you will cover up all the pattern that you want to reveal, and that's about it. You can see there, and I just inked the edges with my brown ink. Okay, remember to always keep your brush nice and wet, so I'm just wrapping this into a wet wipe until I can get to the tap, and I'm going to just move my craft sheet around, and while I've got my brush on, I'm just going to clean there a little bit. And the last thing I just wanted to show you guys is how to apply the microbeads and how to create the sand effect. Okay, so I really like this Camel Safari ink pad. It's a lovely brown, and if I can just find mine, I did have it here just now, but obviously, oh, here we go. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to do the same thing. You're going to put some of the ink onto your craft sheet. You now need an adhesive, so you can either add some glossy accents or you can simply add some gel medium. I showed the ladies on Saturday how I just poured gel medium into this little fine tip applicator. So now I've got an adhesive mixed with my ink. Okay, I think that should be enough. I'm going to try and remember to put back that pin, and I'm also going to mist it just with a little bit of water. Now, to do this technique, you would also need microbeads. You guys have got a little bag, and then I also sprinkled it with some glitter. So I do prefer to use a soft bristled brush for this, and I'm just mixing it all together, and I'm going to be dabbing it, as you can see here at the bottom. Remember, I've got a little bit of teal ink here now, and while this is still wet, I'm going to sprinkle it with some microbeads. The microbeads will actually only adhere where there's enough of this adhesive mixture for it, and I'm also just going to sprinkle it lightly with some glitter. You need to leave this for quite some time. I mean 10, 15, 20 minutes maybe, because it's a very thin mixture. Obviously, if you want more of the microbeads to sit, you would have to apply more adhesive, but I'm going to show that to you now as I did here. So in that sample, what I did was I actually applied my gel or my glossy accents where I wanted to specifically place them. The microbead. So you can see there I've got like a little blob, and I normally do like to just cover it with as much as possible. You can just sprinkle it with the microbeads and leave that to dry completely, and then when it's dry you will have that effect. Okay, and as explained in class, to achieve this look you're simply going to ink the shadow of the chipboard and then paint it with your all-purpose ink. I used the leftover from these pieces to create my little banners, and these are still drying, but you can definitely see there how beautiful that is coming out. Okay, just some detail on the project. I finished it off with some faux stitching borders. That's just to highlight, and I actually did that on all the photo mats. And a reminder that the photo mat for this project is on the chipboard. It's the back of that big chipboard in your listener's pack. Okay, raised some of the elements. I actually raised all my photographs, raised these fussy cut elements, added a few splats, just thin little splats. Showed you guys how to create the bling, okay, by squeezing a little bit of that gel medium or glossy accents and then applying it to the background. Oh, see there, you know what I did there? I actually even applied, I'm feeling it now, for the little headlights. I can see that I added some dimension there. Okay, and then finish it off the splats. I did show in the class, but I don't know if you can actually even see that. If you want to make like kind of a golden splat, you can simply mix some of your all-purpose ink, the gold, Vegas gold, with some of your brown ink. I do hope you can see that shimmer. And then add some splats to your project. And there we go. It's like really simple, nothing complicated, but I just do think it adds something nice to your project. There you can see the sand. Yeah, it will lighten as it dries, and I do hope that you enjoyed these techniques. Thank you so much for your support, and we will see you guys soon.